Imani Carter had learned early in life that composure was a form of armor. At 25, she wore it effortlessly. Tailored blazers, neutral tones, posture straight without stiffness, her presence calm yet commanding. She was not loud. She did not need to be. The way people straightened when she entered a room told her everything she needed to know. As the manager of Maison Elan, one of the most respected high-fashion houses in the city, Imani carried responsibility the way others carried luxury handbags. Securely, confidently, and without apology. The store that morning hummed with quiet elegance. Soft classical music floated through the air, silk dresses hung like art, and sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling glass windows, illuminating marble floors polished to perfection. Clients moved slowly, reverently, as though stepping into a sanctuary built for beauty. Imani stood behind the reception desk, reviewing inventory updates on her tablet, when she felt it. That shift in the air. The kind that came when entitlement walked in before a person did. The woman entered with sharp heels clicking like punctuation marks. Short, aggressive, deliberate. She was dressed in designer from head to toe, but not the kind that whispered wealth. Hers screamed it. Diamonds flashed at her ears and fingers. Her lips were pursed permanently, as if the world was perpetually disappointing her. Behind her trailed two assistants, silent and tense. Imani looked up calmly, already reading the signs. Trouble. Across the showroom, Lena, one of the junior sales associates, approached the woman with a polite smile. "Good morning, ma'am. Welcome to Maison Elan. How may I assist?" "I don't need assistance," the woman snapped, eyes scanning dismissively. "I need competence." Lena's smile faltered, but she remained professional. "Of course. Please feel free to browse. If you need anything." "I said I don't need you," the woman cut in sharply. "Get me someone who knows what they're doing." A few heads turned. Imani watched closely now, her expression unreadable. Lena swallowed. "Ma'am, I assure you I'm fully trained. If there's something specific you're looking for." "I said get someone else," the woman barked. "Are you deaf?" A heavy silence fell. Imani set her tablet down but didn't move yet. She believed in allowing her staff dignity to handle situations until it crossed a line. That line was crossed when the woman grabbed a silk dress from the rack and thrust it toward Lena. "This is last season," she sneered. "Do you people even know what you sell?" Lena blinked. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but that piece is actually part of our limited revival collection. It's..." Smack. The sound cracked through the store like a gunshot. Lena staggered back, hand flying to her cheek. Gasps rippled through the room. One customer dropped her phone. Time froze. Imani felt something cold and sharp settle in her chest. The woman stood tall, breathing hard, eyes blazing with arrogance. "Don't correct me," she said icily. "You exist to serve, not speak." Lena's eyes filled with tears, but she bowed slightly. I'm sorry, ma'am. I apologize." Imani was moving now. She crossed the marble floor with measured steps, heels silent, her face composed though her blood roared in her ears. She stopped beside Lena, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Go to the back," Imani said softly. "Now." Lena hesitated. "But that's not a request." Lena nodded and hurried away, tears spilling freely now. Imani turned to the woman. Her voice was calm, too calm. "Ma'am," she said, "I'm the manager here. Whatever misunderstanding occurred, I assure you it can be resolved without violence." The woman laughed, a short, cruel sound. "Violence?" she scoffed. "Please, that girl should be grateful I didn't have her fired." Imani met her gaze steadily. "We do not tolerate physical abuse toward our staff. I kindly ask that you let this matter go." The woman's eyes narrowed. "Do you know who I am?" Imani didn't blink. "I know who you're behaving like." A murmur spread through the store. The woman stepped closer, invading Imani's space. "I am Madame Kong Hai-rin," she said coldly. "My family owns half this city. One call from me, and this place shuts down." Imani inhaled slowly, then exhaled. "Then make the call," she said evenly. But while you're here, you will respect my staff. Madame Kang's face twisted with fury. You insolent girl. Before anyone could react, she turned sharply, her hand flying up again, aimed not at Lena this time, but at Imani herself. The air shifted. Imani moved without hesitation. She caught the woman's wrist midair. The sound wasn't loud, but it was definitive. Gasps erupted. Imani held her grip firm, not painful but unyielding. Her eyes were dark now, her voice low, steady, dangerous in its control. This hand, she said, will not touch anyone in my store again. Madame Kang stared at her in shock. No one had ever stopped her. Not like this. Imani leaned in slightly. Money does not make you superior, she continued. Power does not give you the right to dehumanize people. And if you ever raise your hand in this store again, toward staff or management, you will be escorted out and banned permanently. She released her wrist. The silence was suffocating. Madame Kang's face flushed red with humiliation and rage. She straightened her coat, lips trembling. You will regret this, she hissed. Imani inclined her head politely. Have a pleasant day. Madame Kang stormed out, her assistants scrambling after her. The moment the doors closed, the store erupted into hushed whispers. Imani turned, her composure slipping just enough to check on Lena, who had returned, eyes wide. Are you okay? Imani asked gently. Lena nodded, tears streaking her face. Thank you, she whispered. Imani squeezed her shoulder. No one gets to treat you like that. Ever. Unbeknownst to Imani, across the city, in a glass-walled penthouse overlooking Steel and Skyline, a man stood watching a video replay on his phone. Kang Siwoo, billionaire heir, tech mogul, known for his intelligence, restraint, and emotional distance. He replayed the clip again. The moment where the woman, his mother, had her hand stopped midair. The woman who did it stood tall, unafraid, her voice steady, her eyes burning with quiet defiance. Siwoo's lips curved slightly. Interesting, he murmured. For the first time in a long while, something stirred in his chest. Curiosity. And fate had already begun its work. Kang Siwoo had built his life on control. At 32, he was everything the world expected him to be: brilliant, composed, unreachable. CEO of Kang Global Technologies. Heir to a dynasty whose name opened doors before knocks were even made. His face graced business magazines, his decisions shifted markets, and his silence intimidated rooms full of powerful men. But power had never impressed him. It was obedience that disgusted him. Siwoo stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse, soul sprawling beneath him like a living circuit board, lights pulsing, systems moving, people existing in predictable hierarchies. He loosened his cufflinks absent-mindedly, eyes fixed on his phone screen. The video had been sent anonymously. No greeting, no explanation, just truth. He watched it again. The luxury boutique, the murmurs. His mother's voice sharp and venomous, unmistakable even without seeing her face at first. Then the slap, the girl recoiling, the apologies. Siwoo's jaw tightened. Then she appeared, tall, dark-skinned, poised in a way that wasn't rehearsed. Her calm didn't bend, it didn't shrink. And when his mother's hand rose again, entitlement instinctive, automatic, the woman caught it. Not with aggression, with certainty. Siwoo replayed that moment several times. The grip, the stillness, the warning delivered without fear. Money does not make you superior. His lips curved faintly. For the first time in years, someone had done what he had failed to do repeatedly. Stand up to Kang Hai-rin without trembling. His phone buzzed. Mother. He let it ring. Again. And again. Finally, he answered. What is it? He asked calmly. Her voice exploded through the line. Do you know what happened to me today? Yes, Siwoo replied. Silence. Then colder. You do. There's a video circulating, he said evenly. Quite detailed. Her breathing grew sharp. That insolent girl assaulted me. Siwoo's eyes hardened. From what I saw, You assaulted a staff member first. How dare you speak to me like that? She snapped. I raised my hand in discipline. You raised your hand in abuse. Another silence, this one dangerous. You're choosing a stranger over your own mother? She demanded. Siwoo exhaled slowly. I'm choosing what's right. She scoffed. That girl humiliated me. I want that manager fired. Immediately. No, he said. The word fell like a blade. You forget who controls. I don't forget anything, Siwoo interrupted softly, including the fact that Kong Global holds a minority stake in that brand, not authority over their staff. You will regret this, she hissed. Perhaps, he said, but not today. He ended the call. For a long moment, Siwoo remained still, phone hanging loosely in his hand. Then he turned back to the window, thoughts circling around one image. Her eyes, they hadn't widened in fear. They hadn't lowered in submission. They had held his mother's gaze and dared it to continue. Imani didn't sleep that night. The incident replayed in her mind despite her efforts to quiet it. She sat on the edge of her bed, city lights flickering through sheer curtains, her blazer folded neatly on a chair like nothing extraordinary had happened. But something had. Her phone buzzed endlessly. Texts from coworkers, friends, even distant acquaintances. You're everywhere. That was brave. Do you know who that woman was? Be careful. Imani turned her phone face down. Fear crept in quietly, unwelcome but persistent. She wasn't naive. She knew power retaliated when challenged. Wealth didn't forget humiliation. Still, she didn't regret it. Not for a second. The next morning, Maison Elon buzzed with tension beneath its elegance. Corporate emails poured in. Meetings were scheduled abruptly. Security was doubled. And yet, no termination notice arrived. Instead, by noon, a black luxury sedan pulled up outside the boutique. Imani watched from the window as the driver stepped out and opened the back door. A man emerged, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in understated sophistication. A charcoal suit without flashy branding, hair perfectly styled yet effortless. His presence shifted the street's rhythm. Customers stared. Staff whispered. Imani's heart thudded once, hard, uninvited. He entered the store. The air changed. Siwoo scanned the interior slowly, taking in the design, the atmosphere, the way staff moved with disciplined grace. His eyes landed on Imani instantly. Not because she was nervous, because she wasn't. She stood behind the counter, spine straight, chin lifted, her expression calm as she met his gaze. Recognition sparked. He walked toward her, footsteps steady. Good afternoon, he said, voice low and smooth. I'm Kong Siwoo. The name landed like a stone dropped into water. Imani felt it ripple through her, but her face remained composed. I know, she replied politely. How can I help you, Mr. Kong? A flicker of amusement crossed his eyes. I came to apologize, he said. Her brow lifted slightly. For my mother's behavior, he said without hesitation. It was unacceptable. Imani studied him carefully now. This was not what she expected. No threats, no veiled warnings, just accountability. I appreciate that, she said evenly. But apologies don't erase actions. No, he agreed. They acknowledge them. A beat passed. He gestured lightly. May we talk somewhere private? Imani hesitated, then nodded. My office. Inside, sunlight filtered through glass walls. Imani gestured for him to sit, but he remained standing until she did. A small, deliberate respect she noticed immediately. I watched the video, Siwoo said. Several times. Imani crossed her legs calmly. Then you know why I acted. I do, he said. And I admire it. Her gaze sharpened. Admiration from powerful men often comes with conditions. A corner of his mouth curved. Not this time. Silence stretched, charged, curious. My mother will not retaliate, he continued. I've made that clear. Imani exhaled subtly. Thank you. He leaned forward slightly. I also want to ensure your staff member receives proper support. She already has, Imani said firmly. From me. Another smile, genuine this time. I expected nothing less, he said. Their eyes held. Something unfamiliar stirred between them, not attraction yet, but recognition. Two people who stood unflinching in a world built on intimidation. Siwoo rose. I won't take more of your time. As he reached the door, he paused. Would you allow me to invite you to dinner? Imani blinked once. This is unexpected, she said honestly. So was you stopping my mother? He replied softly. She considered him. His restraint, his eyes, the quiet tension in his posture. Dinner, she said slowly, is not an obligation. I wouldn't insult you by making it one, he replied. A moment passed. Then Imani nodded. One dinner. Siwoo smiled. Outside, as he stepped back into the sedan, something rare settled in his chest. Anticipation. And inside her office, Imani pressed her palm lightly against her desk, heart beating faster than she cared to admit. Neither of them realized yet. This wasn't just a dinner invitation. It was the beginning of a slow burn that would test power, pride, love, and everything they thought they knew about control. Imani arrived 5 minutes early. Not because she was eager, she told herself that firmly, but because punctuality was a habit she respected, one she had fought hard to make part of her identity. Being early meant control. It meant she entered rooms on her own terms. The restaurant sat high above the city, glass walls revealing a skyline dipped in gold and indigo as evening settled in. It wasn't loud luxury. No velvet ropes. No flashing cameras. Just quiet refinement. Dim lighting, muted conversations, and an atmosphere that suggested discretion was part of the dress code. Imani paused briefly at the entrance, smoothing the sleeve of her deep emerald dress. It was elegant without being flashy, tailored to her frame, the kind of dress that didn't ask for attention but received it anyway. Her hair was pulled back into a sleek low bun, her makeup minimal, her confidence intact. She scanned the room. She found him instantly. Siwoo stood near the window, one hand in his pocket, the other holding a glass of water he hadn't touched. His suit was darker tonight, almost black, paired with a crisp white shirt open at the collar. No tie. He looked relaxed in a way that felt deliberate, as though he had carefully decided how approachable to appear. When his eyes met hers, something subtle shifted. Not hunger. Not possession. Interest sharp, focused, and dangerous in its patience. He smiled as she approached. Ms. Carter, he said. You're right on time. So are you, she replied calmly. That's a good sign. He chuckled softly. I hoped you'd notice. He pulled out her chair, not theatrically but naturally, and waited until she was seated before sitting himself. Imani clocked the gesture without comment. It wasn't performative. It was intentional. Menus arrived. Wine was offered. No alcohol, Imani said politely. Sparkling water is fine. Siwoo nodded. Same. The waiter left, and for a moment, there was silence. Not awkward, but observant. You didn't have to accept, Siwoo said at last. I know dinner invitations from men like me come with assumptions. Imani met his gaze steadily. I accepted because you apologized without excusing the behavior. That matters. And the dinner? He asked. She tilted her head slightly. Curiosity. His smile deepened. I was hoping you'd say that. As their food arrived, conversation flowed carefully at first. Work, the city, neutral ground. Siwoo spoke thoughtfully, never dominating, never dismissive. Imani noticed how he listened, how his attention didn't wander even once. Still, she didn't let her guard down. So, she said midway through the meal, setting her fork down, why did you really want to meet me? Siwoo leaned back slightly, considering her. Because you did something no one around me ever does. And what's that? You said no to power without being reckless about it, he replied. You didn't yell. You didn't posture. You just stopped it. Imani's expression softened. Not into pride, but reflection. I've been on the other side of that hand, she said quietly. Siwoo stilled. She continued, eyes distant now. I grew up watching my mother bow to people who thought money gave them permission to break others. She cleaned houses for families who wouldn't look her in the eye. I learned early that silence doesn't keep you safe. It just makes abuse quieter. Siwoo listened, something tightening in his chest. When I became a manager, Imani went on, I promised myself one thing. No one under my watch would ever feel disposable. He nodded slowly. That promise cost you nothing today? A pause. It may cost me later, she admitted. But I can live with that. He studied her, the strength in her stillness, the clarity in her convictions, and something inside him shifted. Most people wanted something from him. She wanted nothing, and that unsettled him more than admiration ever had. You know, he said slowly, my mother built her power by never being told no. I grew up watching rooms bend to her. And you? Imani asked. I learned to be quiet, he replied honestly, to control outcomes instead of confronting behavior. She met his gaze. That's still a choice. Yes, he said, and it's one I'm reconsidering. The admission surprised him as much as it did her. Dessert arrived untouched. Outside, night deepened. Siwoo realized, disturbingly, that he didn't want the evening to end. Not because of romance, because for the first time in years he wasn't performing. Imani, he said, saying her name fully for the first time. May I ask you something personal? She nodded once. You may ask. I may refuse. Another soft smile. Fair. Are you afraid of me? He asked. She didn't answer immediately. Then, no. He exhaled. Good. But, she added, I'm cautious. As you should be. They stood together to leave, the city lights flickering below like possibilities neither of them was ready to name. At the entrance, he paused. I won't pressure you, he said. If tonight is all this ever is, I'll respect that. Imani looked at him, really looked. I don't believe in absolutes, she said. But I believe in honesty. She extended her hand. He took it. The touch was brief, electric, and as they parted, both felt it, the unmistakable crack in carefully built walls. Not love, not yet, but something far more dangerous. Hope. Power never forgave embarrassment. It waited, and Kang Hai-rin had never been a woman to let humiliation pass unanswered. The morning after the dinner, Imani sensed it before she saw it. The air inside Maison Elan felt tighter. Too quiet, too watchful. Staff moved with polite smiles that didn't quite reach their eyes. Conversations stopped when she walked past. Phones buzzed more than usual. Imani set her bag down in her office and opened her laptop. The headlines stared back at her. Luxury boutique manager accused of disrespecting prominent businesswoman. Her jaw tightened. She clicked. The article was carefully poisoned. No outright lies, just selective truths twisted into something ugly. It spoke of aggressive conduct, unprofessional interference, and an alleged altercation involving a senior customer from a respected conglomerate family. The video had been edited. The slap was gone. The second raised hand was gone. What remained was Imani catching Kang Hai-rin's wrist, frozen midair, framed as an act of aggression. Imani leaned back slowly, breathing in through her nose. So this is how it begins. By mid-morning, corporate emails flooded in. Requests for statements. Invitations to discuss recent developments. A sudden audit notification from a partner company that had never audited them before. And then, worse, a message from headquarters. Emergency board meeting. Mandatory attendance. Imani stood, straightened her blazer, and walked out of her office with her head held high. If power wanted a fight, it wouldn't get a trembling opponent. Across the city, Siwoo watched the news cycle unfold with a growing sense of rage he hadn't felt in years. He stood in his private office, screens displaying article after article, panel discussions dissecting the incident, analysts speculating on corporate fallout. And at the center of it all, Imani, calm, composed, vilified. His assistant hesitated at the door. Sir, your mother is downstairs. Siwoo didn't look away from the screen. Tell her I'm busy. She insists. She always does, he said coldly. Let her wait. Minutes later, Kong Hai-rin walked in anyway, elegance sharpened into something dangerous. You're enjoying this, she said icily. Watching her squirm, Siwoo turned slowly. You edited the footage. She smiled thinly. I corrected the narrative. You endangered her career. She endangered mine first. Siwoo's voice dropped. You assaulted an employee. She embarrassed me. Silence crashed between them. She's not your enemy, he said. But you're turning her into one. Kong Hai-rin stepped closer. You're defending her far too fiercely for a woman you've known a week. Something flickered in his eyes. I'm defending what's right. She laughed softly. You think this is about right and wrong? This is about hierarchy. No, he said. This is about control. And you're losing it. Her smile vanished. You will not interfere, she warned. If she falls, she falls. Siwoo straightened. If she falls, it will be because of you. And I won't forget that. For the first time, uncertainty crossed Kong Hai-rin's face. The boardroom at Maison Elon was cold. Glass, steel, and polite hostility. Imani stood alone at the head of the table as executives filed in. She felt their judgment before they spoke it. We're facing significant backlash, one board member said carefully. Our partners are concerned. Concerned about what? Imani asked calmly. That we don't tolerate abuse? Another executive cleared his throat. The issue is perception. Imani nodded slowly. Perception can be corrected. Violence should not be ignored. A pause. We need to consider suspending you temporarily, someone said. Until this settles. There it was. Imani felt the weight of every staff member who depended on her. Every promise she'd made. She straightened. If you suspend me, she said evenly, you validate the narrative that money excuses harm. That is not a brand I'm willing to represent. Silence. You'd resign? Another asked. I'd walk away with my integrity intact, she replied. The room shifted. They hadn't expected that. After a long, tense deliberation, the decision came. No suspension, but a warning. The test wasn't over. Imani walked out with her head high, but her hands trembled once she reached her office. She exhaled sharply. Then her phone buzzed. Siwoo, are you okay? She stared at the message longer than she meant to. Imani, I'm standing. A moment passed. Siwoo, then so am I. That night, Siwoo sat alone, drink untouched, thoughts heavy. He had crossed lines for her, defied his mother publicly, threatened family balance, risked corporate war, and the truth hit him with unsettling clarity. He wasn't protecting a principal anymore. He was protecting her. And that realization terrified him, because Kong Siwoo had built his life on never needing anyone. And Imani Carter was quietly becoming the one thing he could no longer ignore. Imani stood in her apartment with the lights off, city glow slipping through the windows like a quiet witness. Her heels lay abandoned near the door. Her blazer was folded with care, but her hands had shaken when she did it. She stood barefoot on the cool floor, arms crossed, staring at nothing and everything at once. For the first time since she was 19, she considered leaving. Not just the job, the city, the fight, the constant proving. She had worked too hard to be reduced to a headline, to have her dignity debated by people who had never stood between power and cruelty. Maison Elon had been more than a workplace, it had been proof. Proof that she could rise without becoming bitter, that she could lead without hardening her heart. But now, even that felt fragile. Her phone buzzed again. She didn't look, because she knew who it was. Siwoo. She exhaled, finally picking it up. Siwoo, I'm outside. Her heart skipped, then tightened. Imani, that's not a good idea. Siwoo, I know. I still am. She closed her eyes. 5 minutes later, she opened the door. Siwoo stood there, coat draped over his arm. His usual composure fractured just enough to reveal urgency beneath it. His gaze swept over her face instantly. Not possessive, but concerned. You shouldn't be here, she said quietly. I know, he replied. But you shouldn't be alone tonight. She stepped aside without another word. Inside, silence wrapped around them. The apartment was simple, tasteful, lived in. No excess, no performance. Siwoo noticed everything. You're thinking of leaving, he said. Imani froze. I don't run, she replied. No, he agreed softly. You don't. You walk away when staying costs too much. She turned to face him. And what does this cost you, Siwoo? The question landed hard. He didn't answer immediately. Everything, he said finally. The word hung heavy between them. He stepped closer, but stopped short, respecting the space she hadn't yet invited him into. My mother has escalated, he continued. Board pressure, investor threats. She's forcing a vote to edge me out of certain decisions. Imani's eyes widened slightly. Because of me? Because I refused to let you be crushed quietly, he corrected. She shook her head. You didn't sign up for this. I didn't expect you, he admitted. But here we are. Imani turned away, gripping the back of a chair. I'm tired, Siwoo. I'm strong, but I'm tired. That cracked something in him. He had seen women cry, plead, manipulate. He had never seen one admit exhaustion with such honesty. I don't want to be the reason you lose your legacy, she said. Or your company. He stepped closer now. My legacy means nothing if it's built on silence. She looked at him sharply. You say that now, but when power turns on you, it doesn't warn you. I know, he said. I was raised by it. A beat. I don't want to be another battle you fight, she said. He reached out, then stopped himself. His hand hovered between them, restrained. You're not a battle, he said quietly. You're a line. She swallowed. If I cross it, he continued, I don't get to go back to who I was. Silence. The city pulsed outside. Imani turned fully toward him now. And what if I choose to walk away anyway? His jaw tightened. Then I'll let you. That surprised her. But I won't pretend it doesn't matter, he added. And I won't pretend this is just circumstance anymore. Her breath caught. Neither will I, she whispered. The truth settled between them, heavy, undeniable. This wasn't curiosity. This wasn't coincidence. It was choice. Slowly, deliberately, Imani closed the distance between them. Not rushing, not yielding, choosing. Siwoo's breath hitched when her hand brushed his chest. Not possessive, not pleading, just present. This doesn't end cleanly, she said. No, he agreed. But it will be honest. Their foreheads touched first. A pause. A question without words. Then, finally, her lips met his. The kiss was unhurried, restrained, charged with everything they had not said. No hunger for control. No power play. Just two people standing at the edge of something irreversible. When they parted, neither smiled. They didn't need to, because they both knew. Walking away was no longer an option. And what came next would test not just love, but courage. The fallout didn't come quietly. It came like a storm dressed in silk. Polished headlines, smiling anchors, and corporate statements dripping with diplomacy while cutting just as deep. Imani woke up to her name trending. Not for her work, not for her leadership, but for standing still while power tried to strike. She sat at her kitchen table, coffee untouched, scrolling past headlines that dissected her body language, her tone, her attitude. Was she aggressive? Was she disrespectful? Did she overstep? No one asked why a woman had raised her hand in the first place. Maison Elon issued a carefully worded statement supporting professional conduct on all sides, supportive enough to appear ethical, distant enough to protect investors. Imani understood the language. She'd spoken it long enough. Her phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Siwoo. It was an offer. A competing fashion house, international, powerful, strategically distant from Kong influence, wanted to talk. Quietly, quickly. Imani stared at the message for a long moment. This was the exit. Clean, strategic, tempting. She forwarded the message to Siwoo without comment. Seconds later, he called. Are you considering it? He asked. I'm considering myself, she replied evenly. He exhaled. That's fair. There was no pressure in his voice, only respect. Kong Hai-rin watched the same news from her private lounge, satisfaction curling slowly in her chest. This was how things were done. You didn't destroy people loudly. You isolated them. She lifted her phone and made one call. Proceed, she said simply. Within hours, the real strike landed. A whistleblower report surfaced, anonymous, detailed, damning. It accused Maison Elon of internal misconduct under Imani's management. Nothing provable, nothing immediate, but enough to trigger investigations, enough to freeze partnerships, enough to put her name next to words like mismanagement and liability. Imani read the report once, then again. Her hands didn't shake this time. They went still. This wasn't retaliation anymore. This was war. Siwoo arrived at Kong Global headquarters to find the boardroom already full. Faces he'd known his entire life avoided his eyes. His mother sat at the far end of the table, elegant and composed, victory hidden behind civility. We need to discuss your recent conduct, one board member began. Siwoo took his seat slowly. If this is about Imani Carter, save your breath. A murmur spread. This company cannot afford personal entanglements, another said. Siwoo folded his hands calmly. Then it's fortunate this isn't personal. Kong Hai-rin smiled. Oh, but it is. She slid a folder across the table. The investigation, she said lightly. She's becoming a liability, and you're attached to her. Siwoo didn't open the folder. He looked at his mother instead. You did this. I protected our name. You tried to break her, he corrected. Her eyes hardened. And you are choosing her over us. He stood. The room froze. I'm choosing accountability, he said. Something this family has avoided for too long. Gasps. Shock. Anger. You will step down from oversight, a board member snapped. Immediately. Siwoo nodded once. If that's the cost of doing what's right, so be it. His mother stared at him, disbelief cracking her composure. You'd give up everything? She asked quietly. He met her gaze without flinching. I already have, he said, and walked out. Imani stood in the Maison Elon boardroom again, this time alone by choice. The investigation loomed. The offers waited. The noise roared, but something inside her had settled. She thought of her mother's tired hands, of Lena's tears, of the moment she'd caught that wrist in midair. She didn't want to be moved around like a chess piece anymore. So she made a decision. Not reactive, intentional. She drafted her resignation. Not quiet, public, clear. She released a statement, measured, dignified, unyielding. She spoke of workplace dignity, of power without accountability, of refusing to lead in spaces that tolerated harm. She didn't name Kong Hai-rin. She didn't need to. The silence screamed louder than accusation. The response was immediate. Support flooded in, from employees, creatives, women who had been silenced in luxury spaces for years. Imani didn't walk away broken. She walked away visible. That night, Siwoo stood outside her apartment again. This time she was waiting. You resigned, he said softly. I chose myself, she corrected. A beat. They removed me from oversight, he added. She searched his face. Do you regret it? He shook his head. I regret not doing it sooner. She stepped closer, resting her forehead against his chest. For the first time, neither of them was standing behind a title. Just two people who had burned bridges and found each other still standing. We don't know what comes next, she said. No, he agreed. But we'll build it. Together. Outside, the city buzzed, curious, divided, watching. Inside, something new took shape. Not a fairy tale, but a partnership forged in fire. And for the first time, Kong Hai-rin realized power could be challenged. And love, once awakened, did not ask permission. Imani's empire did not begin with applause. It began in silence. The kind that comes after you burn every bridge behind you and realize the world hasn't ended. Only changed. The The morning after her resignation, she sat at her dining table with her laptop open, legal pads stacked neatly to one side, sunlight spilling across the floor like permission. No assistant, no board, no investors demanding compromise. Just her. For the first time since she'd entered the corporate fashion world, she wasn't managing someone else's vision. She was building her own. She called it Elan Noir, a fashion house rooted in dignity, craftsmanship, power without cruelty. Imani refused to chase the traditional luxury gatekeepers. She went directly to the people who had watched her stand still when intimidation tried to move her. Designers who had been overlooked. Seamstresses underpaid and unheard. Models tired of being disposable. Her inbox flooded. Not with favors. With belief. Siwoo's world, meanwhile, stripped itself down to bone. The penthouse emptied. The board access vanished. The press speculated relentlessly. Fall from grace, romance gone rogue, heir loses grip. He didn't correct them. He rented a modest office space. Glass, steel, and nothing bearing his family name. He rehired talent he trusted. Engineers who had left Kong Global because they refused to compromise ethics for profit. For the first time, people followed him not because of inheritance, but because of integrity. Some nights, exhaustion crept in. On those nights, he found Imani on the studio floor, sketching late, hair tied up, focus absolute. "You don't miss it?" she asked once, not looking up. The power. He watched her work, admiration quiet and steady. "I'm finally using mine." Kong Hai-rin did not disappear quietly. She requested a meeting, neutral ground, private, final. The room was minimalist, expensive, and tense. Imani arrived first, tailored suit, posture impeccable. Siwoo followed moments later. Kong Hai-rin stood as they entered. She looked smaller, not diminished, just no longer towering. "I didn't expect you both," she said coolly. "You requested a meeting," Imani replied. "Not terms." The older woman studied her, the same woman she had tried to crush. "You've caused considerable disruption," Kong Hai-rin said. Imani met her gaze. "You caused consequence." A flicker of something, regret, passed through Kong Hai-rin's eyes before hardening again. "You could have remained comfortable," she said. "You chose resistance." "I chose dignity," Imani replied. Kong Hai-rin turned to her son. "And you chose her." Siwoo stepped forward. "I chose myself." Silence fell heavy. For the first time, Kong Hai-rin had no leverage left. No threats, no edits, no silence to hide behind. She exhaled slowly. "You won't survive this world without compromise," she said. Imani smiled, not cruelly but confidently. "Then I'll change the world I survive in." Kong Hai-rin looked away. Defeat didn't roar. It retreated. Elan Noir launched quietly, then exploded. Not because of scandal, but because people recognized truth when they saw it. Designs that told stories. Campaigns led by consent and respect. A brand that refused to bow. Imani stood at the opening night. Camera flashes bright, music low, her name spoken with reverence. Siwoo stood beside her. Not behind, not in front. When a reporter asked, "Is this partnership personal or professional?" Imani answered without hesitation. "Both." Siwoo reached for her hand. No hiding, no fear, just truth. Later that night, as they stood alone on the balcony overlooking the city they had both been reshaped by, Siwoo pressed his forehead to hers. "You built something extraordinary," he said. "So did you," she replied. Below them, the city pulsed, different now, because somewhere within it, a woman had refused to bow. And a man had learned that love was not weakness. It was the bravest form of rebellion. Imani had always believed that silence could be productive. There was a kind of silence that allowed ideas to breathe, that gave emotions room to stretch instead of suffocate. She had learned to respect that kind of quiet, the kind that followed courage, not fear. But the silence she was sitting in now felt different. It wasn't empty. It was heavy. The Elan Noir studio was still unfinished, but already alive in ways Maison Elan had never been for her. The space was raw. Exposed brick walls, wide industrial windows, bolts of fabric stacked neatly in one corner, sketches taped to boards like living thoughts waiting to become form. It smelled faintly of fabric dye and fresh paint, ambition still settling into the walls. Imani sat alone at the long wooden table in the center of the studio, her laptop closed in front of her, hands resting on top of it as though holding the future steady. She had done it. She had walked away. The realization didn't come with fireworks or triumph. It came quietly, settling into her chest like a steady heartbeat. For years, her life had been about excellence within someone else's structure. Now the structure was gone, and everything ahead of her was hers to define. That should have felt liberating. Instead, it felt terrifying. She leaned back in her chair, eyes lifting to the ceiling, and let herself feel it fully. The fear, the uncertainty, the responsibility. She didn't push it away. She had promised herself she would never lie to herself again. You wanted freedom, she reminded herself. This is what freedom feels like before it becomes power. Her phone buzzed softly on the table. She didn't need to check the name. Siwoo. He had a way of sensing her silences. She picked it up. Siwoo. Still at the studio? A pause before she replied. Imani. Yes. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Siwoo. Can I come? She hesitated. Not because she didn't want him there, but because letting him see her like this, stripped of certainty and armor, felt like crossing a line she hadn't fully mapped yet. After a moment, she typed, Imani. Okay. Siwoo arrived quietly, as he always did. No entourage. No unnecessary presence. Just him, dressed simply, coat slung over his arm, eyes taking in the space with careful curiosity. He stopped just inside the door, watching her. Imani hadn't noticed him yet. She was standing now, fingers brushing over a row of fabric samples. Deep blacks, warm browns, bold jewel tones, textures chosen deliberately. Her hair was tied back loosely, a few strands escaping near her temples. She wore a simple black top and trousers, barefoot on the concrete floor. She looked real, not the composed manager, not the symbol of resistance, just a woman building something with her hands and her heart. Something in Siwoo tightened. He cleared his throat softly. She turned, surprise flickering across her face before easing into recognition. You didn't announce yourself, she said. I didn't want to interrupt, he replied. She studied him for a moment, then gestured to a chair. You're not interrupting. You're entering the chaos. He walked further in, glancing around. It doesn't feel chaotic. She gave a small, humorless smile. That's because you're looking at the outside. Inside my head, it's a storm. He sat, leaning forward slightly, elbows on his knees. Tell me. Imani hesitated, then exhaled. I know what I'm capable of, she said slowly. I know my vision. But now that there's no institution behind me, no safety net, every choice feels heavier. You're carrying it alone, he said. She shook her head. I'm choosing to carry it. There was a difference, and they both knew it. Siwoo leaned back, watching her carefully. Do you regret walking away? She answered without hesitation. No. Then, after a beat, but I'm scared. The honesty settled between them, raw and unpolished. He nodded. So am I. That surprised her. You? She asked. He smiled faintly. I've never rebuilt from scratch before. I've always inherited something, resources, expectations, shadows. This is the first time I don't know exactly how things will end. Imani met his gaze. That makes 2 of us. Silence stretched, not awkward, but contemplative. Outside, the city hummed, unaware of the quiet decisions being made inside the studio. After a while, Siwoo stood and wandered closer to the sketches taped on the wall. He studied them carefully. Clean lines, bold silhouettes, deliberate structure balanced with fluidity. These aren't just clothes, he said. No, she agreed. They're boundaries. He glanced at her. Boundaries. Where strength begins, she said, and where intimidation ends. Something about the way she said it, calm, unyielding, sent a familiar pull through him. You know, he said slowly, you're redefining power in a way people aren't used to. She shrugged lightly. That's usually when they resist it. He turned to face her fully now. And when they try to punish it. Her expression softened, not into fear, but into awareness. They already have, she said. Siwoo stepped closer. Then let them try again. She looked up at him. You say that as if it doesn't cost you. It does, he said quietly. But I'm tired of pretending cost is always a bad thing. Their eyes held. Something unspoken moved between them, recognition deepening into something more dangerous than attraction. Commitment. Imani broke the gaze first, exhaling slowly. People are watching us. Yes, he said. They're labeling us, she continued, using us as symbols, as controversy. I know. She crossed her arms, grounding herself. I don't want to become your rebellion. His brow furrowed. You're not. And I don't want you to become my shield. He stepped closer still, close enough now that she could feel his presence without him touching her. Then don't use me as one, he said softly. Stand beside me. Her breath caught slightly at that. Side by side, he continued. Not in front, not behind. She searched his face for arrogance, for possessiveness, for expectation. She found none, only resolve. Siwoo, she said quietly. This isn't just romance. This is alignment. I know, he replied. That's why it matters. For a long moment, neither moved. Then Imani stepped forward, closing the space herself. This time, there was no hesitation. She rested her forehead lightly against his chest, eyes closing as she allowed herself the rare luxury of stillness. His hands hovered for a second before settling gently at her waist. Careful, respectful, grounding. Neither spoke. They didn't need to. This wasn't passion rushing ahead of understanding. This was understanding deepening into connection. When she finally lifted her head, her eyes met his with quiet clarity. We're crossing lines, she said. Yes, he agreed. Lines that won't let us pretend later. I don't want to pretend, he said. She nodded slowly. Neither do I. He leaned in, not rushing, not claiming, giving her space to pull away if she wanted. She didn't. Their lips met in a kiss that was deeper than before. Not hungry, not reckless, but intentional. A kiss shaped by shared battles and shared choices. When they parted, Imani rested her hands lightly against his chest. If this gets harder, she said, promise me something. Anything, he replied. Don't try to save me. His expression softened. I wouldn't dare. And I won't try to soften myself for you, she added. A faint smile touched his lips. That's what I admire most. Outside, the city continued moving. Inside, two lives settled into a new alignment, no longer reacting to power but redefining it. Together, Imani learned very quickly that visibility was not the same as power. Visibility came with noise. Power came with consequences. The morning Elan Noir's soft launch went live. Her name stopped belonging solely to her. It appeared everywhere, on fashion blogs dissecting her designs with clinical fascination, on social media threads arguing whether she was brilliant or problematic, on opinion columns that framed her existence as either rebellion or romance, never simply competence. Imani sat at her desk in the studio, scrolling slowly, deliberately, refusing to flinch. She had expected scrutiny. What she hadn't fully prepared for was how intimate it felt. How strangers discussed her tone, her posture, her relationship, as though her life were a public document open for annotation. She closed her laptop and leaned back, staring at the unfinished ceiling. This is the price, she reminded herself. Not of ambition, but of refusal. Her phone buzzed. Siwoo. She smiled faintly before answering, not because everything felt fine, but because his presence grounded her in a way nothing else did. Good morning, she said. You've been trending since 6 a.m., he replied. I assume you've seen it. I've seen enough. Are you okay? She considered the question honestly. I'm steady. A pause. Then his voice softened. That's not the same as okay. No, she agreed. But it's enough for today. He exhaled quietly. I'll come by later. She hesitated. Si-woo. I know, he said gently. You don't need rescuing. I'm just available. That made her smile more genuinely. Okay, she said. Later. The first major backlash didn't come from the fashion world. It came from culture. An international magazine published a feature titled, When Love Becomes a Liability. The article never accused her directly. It didn't need to. It implied. It questioned Si-woo's judgment. It framed Imani as a disruption. It suggested, subtly, dangerously, that her presence had derailed a man who once embodied stability. Imani read it once. Then again. Her jaw tightened, not in anger but in recognition. She had seen this pattern before. When women of color stood beside powerful men, they were never companions. They were catalysts, scapegoats. That evening, she sat across from Si-woo at a small restaurant tucked away from cameras. The atmosphere was warm, quiet, almost domestic, an intentional contrast to the chaos outside. You don't have to keep coming out with me publicly, she said suddenly, pushing her food around her plate. We could pace this. Si-woo looked up sharply. Is that what you want? She hesitated. I don't want to become ammunition. He leaned back, studying her. Imani, look at me. She met his gaze. They would find ammunition whether you stood beside me or not, he said calmly. Your silence wouldn't protect you. It would just make them comfortable. She swallowed. But I don't want you losing more ground because of me, she said quietly. He reached across the table, not to grab her hand, but to rest his fingers lightly over hers, waiting. Imani, he said, I didn't lose ground. I left it. The distinction mattered. She nodded slowly, emotion tightening in her chest. I need you to understand something too. Tell me. I've spent my life being careful, she said. Measured. Strategic. I know how to survive systems. But this being openly chosen, openly aligned, it's new. And it's heavy. He squeezed her fingers gently. You don't have to carry it alone. She looked at their hands, intertwined but unclaimed, and realized something quietly unsettling. She trusted him. Not blindly, but deliberately. That scared her more than scrutiny ever could. 2 days later, the invitation arrived. A closed-door cultural and economic forum in Singapore, elite, influential, global. Si-woo had been invited to speak. Imani had been acknowledged, not invited, not excluded, just placed in a gray space that carried its own insult. They're deciding whether you're appropriate, she said flatly when Si-woo showed her the email. He nodded. I thought so. Silence fell between them. Finally, she spoke. If I go, I'll be watched, analyzed, reduced. And if you don't, he said, they'll pretend you don't exist. She met his gaze. Which is worse? He considered it. That depends. Do you want to be invisible or undeniable? The question lingered long after he left. Singapore was breathtaking, towering glass, lush greenery, controlled elegance, and cold. From the moment Imani stepped into the venue beside Si-woo, she felt the shift. Eyes followed her, not curious but measuring. Some smiles were polite, some were thin, some weren't offered at all. She wore a tailored ivory suit from her own collection, not loud, not defiant, but unmistakably hers. Her posture was composed, her expression neutral. Inside, she was alert. She listened as Si-woo spoke on stage, about innovation without exploitation, leadership without fear. His words were calm, precise, and quietly radical. Applause followed. But afterward, during the reception, the pressure closed in. A woman approached first, smiling too warmly. You must be very inspiring. Imani returned the smile evenly. I try to be competent. The woman blinked, then laughed awkwardly before drifting away. A man asked Si-woo pointedly, do personal relationships complicate executive clarity? Si-woo didn't hesitate. Only when clarity was never present to begin with. Imani watched him closely then, not with pride, but with something deeper. Recognition. Later, alone on the balcony overlooking the city lights, the weight finally settled. Imani rested her hands on the railing, breathing slowly. "This is exhausting," she admitted. Siwoo stepped beside her. "We can leave early." She shook her head. "No. If I leave now, it looks like retreat." He studied her profile, the tension she tried to mask, the strength she refused to surrender. "You don't have to prove anything," he said softly. She turned to him. "That's where you're wrong." He frowned. "Imani, I'm not proving myself to them," she said firmly. "I'm proving to myself that visibility won't break me." Silence. Then he nodded. "Then I'm here." She looked at him, eyes searching. "Even if this gets harder?" He didn't flinch. "Especially then." The city glowed beneath them, indifferent, endless. Imani leaned her head against his shoulder, just for a moment. And for the first time since all of this began, the doubt crept in, not about him but about herself. Can I carry this and still be free? That night they argued. Not loudly, not cruelly, but honestly. In the quiet of the hotel room, words surfaced that had been circling for days. "You're used to being watched," Siwoo said. "You grew up navigating scrutiny. And you're used to being insulated from it," she replied. "There's a difference." "I'm learning," he said. "And I'm tired of learning in public," she snapped before she could stop herself. Silence slammed into the room. Imani closed her eyes, breathing deeply. "I'm sorry. That wasn't fair." "No," he said quietly. "It was real." They stood on opposite sides of the room, the space between them charged with unsaid fears. Finally, Siwoo spoke. "Are you afraid this will cost you who you are?" She answered honestly. "I'm afraid it already has." He crossed the room then, stopping just short of touching her. "You're still you," he said firmly. "You haven't softened. You haven't shrunk." She met his gaze. "I feel exposed." He nodded. "So do I." A beat. Then, "But I don't want to retreat." She studied his face, the resolve, the vulnerability beneath it. Neither of them was running. That mattered. Slowly, she stepped into his space. Not to apologize, not to surrender, but to choose. They held each other that night. Not in passion, but in quiet reassurance. Two people standing in the open, feeling the wind, refusing to step back into the shadows. By morning, the headlines would continue. The questions would sharpen. The stakes would rise. But for now, in the stillness before dawn, Imani allowed herself one honest thought. If love had a weight, this would be it. And she was strong enough to carry it. Siwoo had always understood cost in numbers. Market dips. Shareholder confidence. Political favors repaid quietly. Cost was measurable. Predictable. Negotiable. Love, he was learning, was none of those things. The morning after Singapore, he sat alone in the temporary office he now used. Minimalist, quiet, deliberately distant from the polished empire he had once commanded. Sunlight cut through the blinds, casting sharp lines across the desk like unasked questions. His phone lay face up. Unread messages stacked neatly at the top. Board members, advisors, family intermediaries, all polite, all urgent, all circling the same point. Come back, not to who he had been, but to what they could still use. He picked up the phone and finally opened the email marked confidential. Final offer. The terms were laid out with surgical precision. A restructured executive role. Limited public exposure. A gradual re-entry into Kong Global's strategic leadership. And then, the condition, hidden in language designed to sound neutral. Personal affiliations, that present reputational volatility, must be managed discreetly. Managed. Discreetly. He stared at the words until they blurred. They weren't asking him to leave Imani outright. They were asking him to minimize her. To reduce her to a shadow. To love her quietly, safely, invisibly. A familiar anger stirred. But beneath it, something deeper. Disappointment. He closed the email without responding. Imani was already awake when he arrived at the studio later that afternoon. She stood near the cutting table, sleeves rolled up, directing two designers with calm authority. The space hummed with purpose, the kind that came from shared vision rather than imposed hierarchy. Siwoo paused at the entrance, watching her. She moved differently now. More grounded, more deliberate, as if she had accepted that the world would watch, and decided to stand anyway. When she noticed him, her expression softened, though her eyes remained sharp. "You're quiet today," she said once the designers moved away. He nodded. "I needed to see you." She gestured toward the small seating area near the window. "Sit. You look like someone carrying news." He exhaled slowly and sat. She waited. "I was offered a way back," he said finally. Her body stilled, not visibly, but enough that he noticed. "A real way," he continued. "Position, influence, access." She nodded once. And conditions." She didn't interrupt. "They want less visibility," he said carefully. "Less alignment." Her jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "They want you quiet," she said. "Yes. And me invisible." "Yes." Silence settled between them. Imani leaned back against the table, crossing her arms. Not defensively, but thoughtfully. "Did you consider it?" she asked. He didn't lie. "Yes." Her eyes lifted to his then. Not accusing, not wounded, but searching. "Thank you for telling me," she said quietly. That surprised him more than anger would have. "I need you to understand something," she continued. "If you had chosen it, I wouldn't have blamed you." His chest tightened. "I know." She studied him. "This path isn't guaranteed. Not financially. Not socially. Loving me openly makes things harder." He stood then, crossing the small distance between them. "Imani," he said, voice low. "Loving you makes things clearer." She swallowed. He reached out, not to hold her, but to cup her jaw gently, giving her space to pull away. She didn't. "They taught me power was about control," he said. "But you've shown me it's about courage." Her breath hitched slightly. "I won't manage you," he continued. "I won't hide you. And I won't love you like an apology." Her eyes glistened, not with tears, but with emotion held tightly in check. "Then understand this too," she said softly. "Choosing me doesn't make you noble. It makes you accountable." He nodded. "I accept that." They stood there for a long moment, the weight of the choice settling fully between them. Then Imani stepped back. Not away, but into herself. "I don't want to be the reason you burn bridges you still need," she said. He met her gaze steadily. "The bridges I need will hold." The public fallout came faster than either expected. Within 48 hours of Siwoo declining the offer, this time publicly, clearly markets reacted. Not dramatically, but noticeably. Articles shifted tone. Heir refuses return amid controversial relationship. Legacy at risk? Love or recklessness? Imani read the headlines with a familiar calm. She had been here before, but Siwoo hadn't. That night, she found him sitting alone in his office, jacket draped over the back of his chair, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened though he rarely wore one anymore. "You okay?" she asked gently. He looked up, eyes tired but focused. "I thought I was prepared." "For what?" "For how quickly people turn loyalty into leverage." She nodded. "Power hates unpredictability. And you," he said softly, "are very unpredictable." She smiled faintly. "So are you." She moved closer, resting her hip against the desk. "This is the part where I check in." He raised a brow slightly. "Do you still choose this?" she asked. "Knowing it won't get easier." He stood, stepping into her space. "I choose you," he said simply. "Not because it's difficult, because it's honest." She closed her eyes briefly, leaning her forehead against his. "I won't become smaller to make this easier," she said. "I don't want you smaller," he replied. "I want you exactly like this." A week later, the pressure escalated. A closed-door investors' dinner. Invitation extended to Siwoo alone. This time, he declined without hesitation. The message was clear. So was the response. A senior board member, one of the few who had remained neutral, requested a private meeting. Siwoo arrived composed. The man sighed heavily. "You're dismantling decades of trust." Siwoo leaned back. "I'm redefining it." "You're risking everything for a woman," the man said bluntly. Siwoo's expression hardened. "I'm risking everything for integrity. She's just visible proof of it." The man studied him. "You could lose control permanently." Siwoo nodded. "Then I'll build something better." Imani, meanwhile, faced her own test. A major international retailer expressed interest in carrying Elan Noir on one condition. Rebrand. Soften the messaging. Downplay the incident. Distance the brand from political implications. Imani listened politely, then declined. She didn't even consult Siwoo. That night, she told him over dinner. "I turned it down," she said calmly. He didn't ask why. He smiled. "I knew you would." She laughed softly. "I'm not sure whether that's admiration or resignation." "Both," he said. She reached across the table, squeezing his hand. "This is what it costs." He squeezed back. "Worth it." Later, lying beside each other in the quiet, the city distant and dim, Siwoo spoke into the dark. "I used to think legacy was something inherited," he said. "Now I think it's something chosen." Imani turned toward him. "And what are you choosing?" He brushed his thumb lightly along her arm, grounding, steady. "A life where love isn't hidden," he said, "and power isn't borrowed." She rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm beneath. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe, not that love would protect them, but that it would be worth the cost. The invitation arrived in cream cardstock, embossed in restrained gold, elegant, deliberate, unmistakably Kong. Imani held it between her fingers, studying the precise lettering as if it might reveal intent through design alone. Kong Cultural Foundation, Annual Legacy Gala. Attendance requested. Not invited. Requested. She felt the difference immediately. Siwoo stood behind her, his presence quiet but attentive. He had read it over her shoulder, his jaw tightening in a way she recognized. "She's forcing proximity," he said. Imani nodded. "She's forcing a stage." Neither of them pretended ignorance. Kong Hairin had not been silent these past weeks. She had simply been strategic. Let the media speculate. Let markets wobble. Let public sympathy fracture. And now this public setting, a curated audience, an environment where civility could be weaponized. Imani exhaled slowly. "I'm going." Siwoo didn't respond immediately. "I need to," she continued. "Not for her. For myself." He stepped closer, resting his hands lightly on her shoulders. "Then I'll be there." She turned to face him. "No." His brows furrowed. "Imani, this isn't your battle," she said gently. "This is hers and mine." His hands fell, but his gaze remained steady. "She won't play fair." Imani's lips curved slightly, not in arrogance, but in resolve. "Neither will I." The gala unfolded exactly as Kong Hairin intended. Crystal chandeliers, muted classical music, an audience steeped in legacy and expectation. Imani arrived alone. Her gown was midnight blue, structured, flowing, unapologetically powerful. No diamonds, no excess, just presence. Whispers followed her steps, some curious, some disapproving, some resentful. She walked as though none of them mattered. Kong Hairin spotted her immediately. She stood near the center of the room, regal in ivory silk, posture perfect, expression composed. Her smile, when she approached, was immaculate. "Imani," she said warmly. "You came." "Yes," Imani replied. "You asked." Hairin's eyes flicked briefly over her attire, assessing. "You look confident." "I am," Imani said. A pause. "May we speak privately?" Hairin asked. Imani nodded. "Of course." They moved toward a quieter corner of the ballroom, the space narrowing as though the walls themselves were listening. I won't pretend this isn't complicated, Hyrin began. You've disrupted a carefully maintained balance. Imani met her gaze calmly. I didn't ask to be placed inside it. Hyrin's smile tightened. You could choose to leave it. I could, Imani agreed. But I won't. A subtle shift passed over Hyrin's face, annoyance flickering beneath control. My son is sacrificing stability, she said. His future, his legacy. Your son is choosing integrity, Imani replied evenly. That may feel like loss to you. Hyrin's eyes hardened. Do you know what it costs to build an empire? Imani nodded once. Do you know what it costs to become human again? The question landed heavily between them. You mistake sentiment for strength, Hyrin said coolly. No, Imani countered. I recognize fear disguised as discipline. Hyrin inhaled sharply. You think standing beside him makes you powerful. I don't stand beside him for power, Imani said. I stand because I won't shrink. The silence that followed was sharp, electric. You are temporary, Hyrin said at last. My world is not. Imani stepped closer, not threatening but unyielding. Worlds change, she said softly, especially when women stop asking permission to exist within them. For the first time, Hyrin's composure cracked. Just slightly. The confrontation did not end privately. Couldn't. Kong Hyrin returned to the center of the room and took the stage. Her voice carried effortlessly, cultured and commanding. Tonight, she began, we celebrate legacy, not just of wealth, but of values passed carefully from one generation to the next. Imani felt the room tense. She knew what was coming. There has been much conversation lately, Hyrin continued, about disruption, about change, about whether tradition still serves us. Eyes drifted toward Imani. Let me be clear, Hyrin said. Progress without restraint becomes chaos. A murmur rippled through the audience. Imani's pulse steadied. When Hyrin finished, applause followed, polite, controlled. Then something unexpected happened. Imani stepped forward. The movement alone silenced the room. She hadn't been invited to speak. She hadn't been announced. But she didn't wait. She met Hyrin's gaze once, asking nothing. Then she faced the audience. My name is Imani, she said, her voice calm but resonant. And I wasn't prepared to speak tonight. A ripple of surprise. But silence, she continued, can also be a form of agreement. And I don't agree. The room froze. I am not here to challenge tradition, she said. I am here to challenge the idea that tradition must exclude compassion, dignity, and choice. Hyrin stiffened. I didn't enter this world seeking power. Imani went on. I entered it seeking integrity. And I refuse to apologize for being visible while doing so. Her eyes swept the room. Legacy, she said, is not what you preserve at all costs. It's what you are brave enough to evolve. Silence followed. Not polite, not comfortable, but real. Then slowly applause began. Not loud, but undeniable. Imani stepped back. She hadn't raised her voice. She hadn't begged. She had simply stood. Siwoo watched from the entrance, heart pounding. He hadn't meant to come, but he couldn't stay away. Seeing her there, unbowed, unbroken, something inside him settled. She didn't need his protection. She didn't need his name. She was power, and she was choosing him anyway. After the gala, Kong Hyrin approached Siwoo. Her voice was controlled. You've made your position clear. He nodded. I have. She studied him, the man he had become rather than the heir she had shaped. You will not inherit my empire, she said quietly. He met her gaze without hesitation. Then I'll build my own. A pause. Then, almost imperceptibly, something like respect flickered in her eyes. You've chosen her, she said. Yes, he replied. And myself. Later that night, Siwoo found Imani standing alone on the terrace, city lights stretching endlessly beyond. You were extraordinary, he said softly. She didn't turn. I was honest. He joined her, resting his arms on the railing beside hers. "You changed everything," he said. She glanced at him. "So did you." They stood together, the noise of the world below fading. For the first time, their love wasn't quiet. It wasn't careful. It was seen, and it was strong enough to withstand it. Morning arrived without spectacle. No headlines broke overnight. No markets crashed. No public apology was issued. And yet, everything had changed. Imani woke to soft light filtering through sheer curtains, the city still quiet in that rare hour before ambition stirred. She lay still for a moment, listening to Siwoo's breathing beside her. Slow, steady, unguarded. There was something almost sacred about that sound. For most of her life, rest had been conditional, earned, borrowed in fragments between responsibilities. But this calm felt chosen. She turned her head slightly, studying him. He looked younger in sleep, less burdened, less guarded by expectation. She wondered briefly if he felt the same about her. When he stirred, blinking awake, he smiled immediately, as though her presence was the first thing he noticed. "You're staring," he murmured. "I'm thinking," she replied. "That's worse," he said lightly. "Should I be worried?" She smiled. "Only if you're afraid of peace." He reached for her hand beneath the sheets, lacing their fingers together. "I'm learning to trust it." They stayed like that for a while, no rush, no urgency. Outside, the city resumed its rhythm. Inside, something settled. The first meeting was Imani's. Not a crisis meeting. Not a defense. A beginning. The Elan Noir studio buzzed with quiet anticipation as she stepped into the room. Designers, investors, and collaborators turned toward her. Not out of obligation, but respect. She didn't waste time. "We're expanding," she said simply. Not aggressively, intentionally. She outlined her vision with clarity. New partnerships rooted in ethics, production transparency, creative autonomy. A brand not built to be consumed quickly, but to last. "This isn't about rebellion," she said. "It's about ownership, of story, of labor, of value." Heads nodded. Questions followed, sharp, intelligent, engaged. Imani answered each one without flinching. For the first time, no one asked about him. No one mentioned controversy. They asked about her. When the meeting ended, one of the senior designers approached her quietly. "You changed something," she said. "People are listening differently now." Imani smiled, not proudly but knowingly. "Good." Siwoo's reckoning came more slowly. It began with silence. The Kong Foundation issued a brief statement acknowledging strategic realignment. No condemnation, no endorsement, just distance. Then came the invitations, not from legacy institutions but from disruptors, innovators, people who had watched him walk away from certainty and recognized courage in it. A venture capital group invited him to consult, not as a Kong but as himself. He accepted, not eagerly, but deliberately. During his first session, a young founder asked him, "Do you regret leaving everything behind?" Siwoo paused before answering. "No," he said finally. "I regret not knowing sooner that I could." The first time they were photographed together afterward, it wasn't at a gala. It was at a street cafe. Imani wore sunglasses and laughter. Siwoo leaned toward her mid-sentence, unaware of the camera. The image spread quickly. The caption read, "Unhidden." Public response shifted, not entirely, but enough. Narratives softened, not because approval was granted, but because authenticity was undeniable. Kong Hairin watched from a distance. She did not reach out again. She did not retaliate. But she did attend the next board meeting in silence, her son's absence noticeable. For the first time in decades, she found herself considering a future not shaped by control. It unsettled her. It also quietly intrigued her. Imani and Siwoo moved into a space that was neither palace nor penthouse. Light-filled, modest, intentional. Their mornings became routines of shared coffee and parallel work. Their evenings, conversations without performance. They argued sometimes. About boundaries. About pacing. about how much of themselves to give the world. But they never argued about choice. One night, after a particularly long day, Imani sat on the balcony, sketchbook open but untouched. Siwoo joined her, handing her a glass of wine. "You're quiet," he said. "I'm reflecting," she replied. He waited. "I spent so long preparing to fight," she said slowly. "I didn't think about what came after." He nodded. "Victory is disorienting." She smiled faintly. "Is this victory?" He considered it. "It's freedom." She leaned back, resting her head against his shoulder. "I don't want to lose myself in us." He wrapped an arm around her. "You won't. I fell in love with who you already are." She looked up at him. "Promise me something. Anything. If this ever asks me to shrink," she said. "We stop." He didn't hesitate. "Agreed. And if it asks you to perform a role you don't believe in, we walk away together," he said. She smiled then, fully, openly. The launch of Elan Noir's first international flagship was quiet by design. No celebrities. No spectacle. Just intention. Imani stood at the entrance, greeting guests personally. She wore a tailored piece from the collection, clean lines, bold structure, unmistakably hers. Siwoo stood nearby, not in front, not behind. Beside, a journalist approached cautiously. "Imani, do you consider your journey a statement against power?" She smiled. "No, I consider it a statement about redefining it." "And your relationship?" the journalist pressed. Imani glanced at Siwoo, then back. "It's not a statement," she said. "It's a choice." That night, after the last guest left and the lights dimmed, they stood alone in the space she had built. She exhaled deeply. "I did this," she said softly. "Yes," he replied. "You did." She turned to him, eyes shining, not with triumph, but fulfillment. "And you?" she asked. "What did you build?" He smiled. "A life that doesn't ask permission." She stepped into his arms then. Not carefully, not guarded. Fully. The kiss that followed wasn't desperate. It wasn't stolen. It was claimed. Later, lying together in the quiet, Imani traced slow patterns on his chest. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked. "The certainty?" He shook his head. "I miss comfort sometimes, but certainty without truth is just another cage." She nodded. "I used to think love had to be earned." He kissed her forehead. "You taught me it has to be chosen." They fell asleep like that. No guards, no shadows, no walls. Just two people who had refused to bow. In time, the world adjusted. It always does. But the story remained. Not as scandal, not as rebellion. As proof that power does not have to dominate. That love does not have to hide. That legacy does not have to suffocate. Imani and Siwoo didn't inherit an empire. They built one. In the open. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, leave us a comment. Also like, share and subscribe to our channel, and click on the notification bell to get notified whenever a new story is made.